Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Slovakia is at a crossroads of politics and security. Last year's shooting of Prime Minister Robert Fico and the subsequent 21-year terrorism sentence for the attacker has left the nation grappling with questions of safety, justice, and political division. And to help us understand the implications both at home and across Europe, we're joined now by Michal Vašečka, professor at Sociology at Bratislava International School of Liberal Arts. Good to have you on TVP World. Welcome.
Hello to Warsaw. Thank you for having me.
I want to begin, Michal, with this now decision. The 70-year-old Mr. Cintula getting 21 years for the shooting. What does this tell us about the legal system? I mean, this is a very polarizing event, but how is this now being digested by Slovakians?
To be very honest, I think Slovak society digested it very well. Of course, question remains about legal qualification, and that was also the reason for an appeal of the defense of Mr. Cintula, because many expected that he might be sued for premeditated murder or attempted murder. However, the legal qualification was a terrorism. And then somewhere at the end of the day, they lowered the sentence to 21 years, which because of the age, because of the bad health status. There are still questions whether this was really the act of terrorism. But honestly speaking, that's not the most important thing here. The most important thing, obviously, is that Slovak society, after this attempted murder of on Prime Minister, is even more polarized and really deeply divided. And let's remind ourselves that this is not an everyday development. The last shooting of a prime minister in Europe happened in Sweden years ago, and Olaf Palme was murdered, and we still don't know everything what was behind. And honestly, some questions are still left behind even in this case.
Mm-hmm. I mean, unfortunately, we're seeing more political violence in general. I mean, on this sort of scale, that is unique. But at the same time, unfortunately, we do see that increasing across the continent. I want to get in more of what you said. You mentioned that this has now become even more polarizing because of what's happened, because of this case. Now, the Prime Minister, Mr. Fico, has even come out and said he's blamed the opposition for plotting a coup. Now, words like that, they can't help this polarization, can they? What does that contribute to all this in any negative way here?
Oh, absolutely. And this is the core of the whole issue. The allegation that this was terrorism, an illegal qualification of terrorism, was based on the fact that the aim was to undermine the foundations of the constitutional system in Slovakia. So that's why terrorism. But immediately after that happened, coalition politicians started to accuse opposition that it's their work, that in fact they were the ones who were shooting, because the guy who was shooting, who is over 70, is just in a way just the victim of hatred spread by opposition. And opposition was, of course, trying to protect themselves because there was no involvement, and even investigation didn't prove any involvement whatsoever of any opposition. The truth is that you can find actually one photograph, one picture of Mr. Cintula when he's participating on some rally, opposition rally. But, I mean, thousands of other people were participating as well. Mm-hmm. So even the court didn't prove anything in this sense. And the truth is that polarization and a heated atmosphere in a country continues. And just let me add something to it. Even yesterday, Prime Minister Fico again accused opposition that yes, one guy is in jail, but opposition is already working on training others who might commit something like that in the future. Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, it continues.
Yeah. Two things on there. I mean, one thing Mr. Cintula said that he wanted to injure the prime minister because he was against his policies. You've just said yourself as well, there are many people who are against the policies of Robert Fico. That doesn't mean that they resort to violence. At the same time, tell us a bit about that political mood, because we've seen protests around Slovakia. I mean, is this on the upsurge here? What is the political mood there also from the people? I mean, the policies of Mr. Fico, are they finding a home with most people? Is that changing now? I mean, there have been allegations of corruption. This is not new, isn't it?
Well, it's definitely not new, and the truth is that at the moment, probably majority of people are pretty unsatisfied. Even some supporters of recent coalition are not showing any enthusiasm about the future. And I would divide it into three parts. The first is exactly as you said, the fight against corruption and clientelism, which is typical for all governments of Fico since 2006. And in fact, it's not just corruption as we know it from the Western Europe, but it's the whole system of something what we call in Central and Eastern Europe captured state. The second is disappointment with so-called economic consolidation, which is harsh. Let me remind you, unlike Poland, Slovakia at the moment is falling like a rock economically, and Slovaks are not used to it because there were times when Slovakia was doing pretty well years ago. And thirdly, the fight of some opposition against Mr. Fico's government is about the very orientation of the country, whether it's still European Union, NATO, or it's a cooperation with the BRICS, with Russia, and Mr. Fico is undermining the consensus which was present in Slovakia until 2023. So even during his previous governments. So what we see now in Slovakia is a rather systematic and radical change of the certain consensus which was here since 1989.
Mm-hmm. Speaking on that, Michael, that change, I want to also ask you, not so long ago, in fact, I think just some days ago, Smer, the political party of the Prime Minister, in the European Parliament itself, on the pan-European level, that grouping has changed. They've now been expelled from the Socialists and Democrats, or the center-left, and have now joined, actually, the Patriots, so that more far-right bloc, which actually is led by Viktor Orbán, as well as Babiš. So I'm just curious about the reaction to that and what that means for Slovakia. I mean, also looking at the table, I mean, those are 5 seats, but nevertheless, I mean, this is another block of continued change. What does that say about Slovakia's direction and for the EU? I mean, we have the council meeting happening tomorrow.
Slovaks are not surprised, in fact. Smer was moving toward radical right for years already. And in the last 2 years, it was very obvious. Just for very brief understanding of listeners, viewers, what Fico was saying and doing was definitely more radical than Brothers of Italy, AfD in Germany, or not even mentioning Front National in France. So they were moving this direction, and they were excusing it that they are social democrats, but Slovak and not international ones, and they are rustical. They were even using the word rustical, which, I mean, it's in a way funny because you are claiming that you are traditionalist. So no, Slovaks are not surprised, and Smer now is basically where they belong, and I hope that in this sense that they will be also happy to continue their policies and politics where it would suit them, so to say.
And also, if we're looking at now the grouping, I want to jump in on that as well. I mean, Slovakia, quite a small state in Central Europe, but now with Orbán politically, also now allied with Babiš in the Czech Republic, who's recently won there. Does this now make policies of Robert Fico, does that amplify what he can do in Europe and beyond?
Absolutely, and from Warsaw and also from Berlin, Brussels, many people might suggest that there is this very tight cooperation of Bratislava and Budapest. In many aspects, yes, but I wouldn't compare Orbán and Fico in many aspects. Fico, in many ways, is more sophisticated because Orbán is not trying so desperately. How to say it politely, to bring the policies and type of thinking about the world typical for Budapest to other parts of Central Europe. Not necessarily. Fico is desperately trying to influence also politics in Prague, eventually in Warsaw, by sending clear messages that Visegrad Group should be reunited, renewed, and as a Visegrad, we might have a chance to oppose, now, let me quote, strange policies coming from Brussels. So in this sense, Fico, representing the smallest country of Visegrad Group, is probably more courageous than many people would say, seeing it from distance.
Mm-hmm. All right. And just briefly, one quick statement as well. I mean, Fico is going to be representing also and voting for Hungary and Orbán at that European Council summit that's starting tomorrow. But he is actually, as you just said, really briefly, his policy differs slightly towards Ukraine from Orbán, doesn't it? Will this be a potential conflict, you reckon?
The conflict between Budapest and Bratislava, definitely no. What Fico is saying is basically, we are playing on all sides. We want to be friends with everybody. And very honestly, that doesn't really work. It works when you have a sunshine outside, which was a few years ago. Now, in a international turmoil, you are starting to be untrustworthy for everybody. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what is happening to Slovakia. So sooner or later, Mr. Fico will be pushed to the wall and will have to cooperate only with those who will be buying his policies. And honestly, what we see now is that Slovakia is still more and more somehow segregated in Brussels. Nobody really talks to Slovak authorities, which is, of course, worsening chances of Slovakia for the future.
On that note, we'll have to see what the future brings. Indeed, we'll have to close it there. Really fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for all that. I was Professor Michal Vašečka. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay tuned. Much more will come up right here on TVP World, so don't go away.